I pronounced the acronym right, kicked in it, all right. She'll be telling us a little bit about it and her work where it's actually you deal with women's programs around in the digital space. Okay, so she'll be giving us a little bit of explanation on what that entails. And this is what we're discussing. I mentioned it right at the start. Indecent exposure, the weaponization of acts of intimacy online. If you've not met before, my name is Olive Burrows and I'll be your host for the duration of the next 1.5 hours or so. Okay, Daily Nation. I've seen a lot of newspapers have now caught up with the Nation Media Group, together with Kevin Mutai, Wainaina, Karim in Mombasa, our coast regional reporters and cameramen, as well as our newspaper team there have been on this story right from day one. The rest are catching up now, but the numbers have jumped to 73. Shakahola horror deaths jump to 73. Police exhumed another 26 bodies from multiple graves in Pastor Paul Mackenzie's Shakahola village farm in Kilifi yesterday, taking the toll to 65, with 8 other church members who had been rescued succumbing in hospital. But the search for bodies is not over yet. Amid reports, controversial pastor had warned of, quote, consequences. And I think this, you know how they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. The picture on the front page of the Daily Nation, I think, just says it all. I see it's a picture taken by Washira Mwangi of the Nation. Some of the 26 bodies that were exhumed yesterday from multiple graves at Shakahola village in Kilifi County. This brings the total tally of exhumed bodies in the last 4 days to 65. And I see various images, a father's pain. My missing sons among the dead. I see Godwin Maxwell, 17 years of age. Vincent Lihanda, 21 years of age. Collins Lijodi, 14 years of age. I see several quotes here. President William Ruto terming Paul Mackenzie a terrorist. President Ruto likens Mackenzie's activities to those of terrorists who use religion to radicalize. Catholic Church and legislators call for the introduction of laws to curb the emergence of cults. And Kisumu man suspects that his 3 sons who went missing are among the dead. More on pages 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Daily Nation. And I see they have quoted the Inspector General of Police, Japhet Kome, at the very top there. And it reads, only DNA tests will reveal the identity of victims. Says the Inspector General of Police, Japhet Kome. I see a quote also here on the front page of the Daily Nation. I hope it's close enough for you to see as well. And it says, mnacho pigania nacho hamkijui na kitawaramba, nimewaambia kitawaramba. You don't know the magnitude, I beg your pardon, of what you are fighting. You will soon face the consequences. So that is the front page of the Daily Nation. Let's see how the other dailies have covered this horror. And we take a look now. Let's take a look at the Standard. And they call it a cult massacre. Questions abound after more than 70 bodies of cult victims were dug up in graves on land said to belong to Pastor Paul Mackenzie. Is there a recruiting agency? Why didn't the intelligence community smell a rat in spite of too many telltale signs? Did local police look the other way as gullible faithful were lured to their deaths? Is it time to regulate religious activities? That appears to be the question this morning. And I see on the front page, President William Ruto is quoted as saying what we're seeing in Shakahola is akin to terrorists. Mackenzie is a terrible terrorist. I have instructed the agencies responsible to get to the bottom of the activities of the people who want to use religion to advance weird and unacceptable ideologies. I see here Kithure Kindiki, the Interior Cabinet Secretary, has also been quoted on the front page of the Standard. The quote being, the horrendous blight on our conscience must lead not only to the most severe punishment of the perpetrator of the atrocity, but tighter regulation of every church, mosque, temple, and synagogue going forward. When we look at the Star, it is the same story as you would expect. And this is their headline: How Mackenzie won hearts of villagers, followers and residents mingled freely for 3 years. But this changed at the start of 40-day fast. Several images. The man in question, who President William Ruto has labeled a terrorist, controversial Pastor Paul Mackenzie. To the right, we have detectives from the homicide unit and forensic experts retrieve more bodies from Shakahola graves in Magarini, Kilifi yesterday. When we take a look at the Taifa Leo, you would expect same headline. And it reads as such: Shakahola, serikali yazinduka usingizini. And several leaders have been highlighted on the front page there. We have President William Ruto, the governor, Kilifi Governor Gideon Mongaro, Kithure Kindiki, Interior Cabinet Secretary, Moses Wetangula, National Assembly Speaker, Nurdin Haji, Director of Public Prosecutions, and finally the Inspector General of Police, Japhet Kome. Mili 26 zaidi yafukuliwa, huku viongozi wa serikali wakionekana kushtuka na kuahidi kuchukua hatua ya kutanzua kitendawili cha vifo katika dhehebu la Paul Mackenzie japo kwa kuchelewa. And again, we have those bodies there. The image again is by Washira Mwangi. Before we get into what else is contained in the dailies this morning, ladies, I'm curious what you make of these events. I'll start with you, Lois.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things that we just need to acknowledge is that issues of personal faith and belief are extremely strong. And it depends, because even right now, the person who is believing differently and maybe soberly has also been guided and maybe mentored by someone almost on a regular basis, which is mostly in faith is a weekly basis. You find people being taught on a weekly basis on the faith and belief systems that they uphold. And so I really acknowledge the fact that this happened over years. It's not a one-week thing. And it started as an innocent way of belief system, and it's only the sudden end of it, when now it changed and it detoured, that things have happened differently. But for the last 3 years, these people have been with their pastor, and they have been doing whatever they have been doing because they've not fasted for 3 years. Yeah.
Okay.
So what happens then? What is it that makes somebody then believe in another person? And that is because he offered an alternative. Because for all these people to have traveled and joined him, there was an alternative to a life that they were living, and they needed maybe better, or they needed something different. And he offered it up to a certain time that things changed. And that's the danger of not being able to monitor what people are going through and their vulnerability to someone else taking advantage of them. And at the core of it, I know, and for sure, when you look at some of these issues that have happened before, because this is not the first time this is happening, it has happened before. And I remember the lawyer's case. You remember there was a teacher's case sometime in Rift Valley. So what we know is that a lot of mental illnesses find very safe havens in religion. So someone is unwell, is mentally unstable, or is going through a situation that can make them really take advantage of another person, but it usually finds a very safe haven in religion. And if not religion, then it sometimes finds a safe haven in the ability maybe to employ people. So when they employ somebody, they put them through certain conditions, and they have no way of getting out because they are getting resources and their livelihood from that.
Okay, and you sort of have preempted one of the questions that I was planning to borrow from the Inspector General of Police. And he asked, how can someone tell you not to eat and you don't eat? And you've talked about some of these people perhaps were suffering from certain conditions that made them susceptible.
Yeah, because, you know, from personal experience in the world of psychology, I think I got this firsthand when I worked at one time at a gender-based violence center. And you find that the person who has been violated is told when they go to hospital because they've broken a limb, then they say, I fell over the staircase. And you find this person is able to say so because there's something that has made them very vulnerable to the person who is now guiding them to say things that are not real for purposes of, you know, continuing to kind of be under that kind of influence. So it's very possible, just like today we go to a doctor and I have an illness, and because I trust that doctor, because he's in that position, and he tells me, take this medication 4 times a day, and I do take, that's the same thing that is happening to issues of faith and issues of indoctrination.
Okay. I'm curious what Dr. Rimeri Goretti has thinks of these events. You know, speaking first as a Kenyan and then also as a sociologist. When you read these headlines, when you hear these horror stories, because that is what they are, what runs through your mind?
It's very unfortunate that the society has come to this, and this is the failure of what we call socialization. How are our children socialized? From the time they are born to the time they are now exposed to the public, and there is more to come. This is just a tip of the iceberg if you don't work at it, because so many things are happening here. Some, we have told, have sold their property to come here. Some have come to seek wellness and all that. And if you look at it, there's a lot. There's a big gap between what we used to have as religion and what we now have as religion. We have not yet struck a balance where we say this is what we want to do and this is what we should do. So the people who have gone ahead of us in the line of religion, they make use of the society. And if we don't check it, we lose a lot, and especially our children. And this calls for the society not to entrust anybody with their child right from the home before they leave home. Because if you look at these people, maybe they never got information before they reached the age of 5, I would say so. So when they stepped out to the nursery, they were exposed to the outside world, and it continued until what it is. So they are not firm in their mind. So it calls for parents to go back to the drawing board and inculcate in children what they would want it to be right from home, such that even if you now go out, you are not shaken. So society has failed, and we have failed. We need to go back and nurture our children the best way we can. Otherwise, we are losing them. You can see even in the last general elections, the millennials never came out to vote. That tells you that something is not adding up. They have not yet, and yet they can consume such kind of things. And again, with the advent of technology, we are losing it even big time. You saw the other day in the TikTok where somebody has posted a room where if you want to go and commit suicide, there is everything for you, waiting for you, whether you want to kill yourself through a gun, through a sharp knife, through electrocution and all that, it is there for you. So we can tell you where the society is heading to, and we shall have such many rooms even here in Nairobi, where we come from and all that. So we need to go back as a people, as human beings, to bring up the humanity the best way it should. This is not, religion is part of us. It is cultural. We were born, we found religion, whether it is Christianity, Islamic and all that, it has been part of us. But how do we consume it? It should be there to help us, but not to destroy us the way it has done this time around. Thank you. Yeah.
How about you, Angela? What are your thoughts on these stories?
First of all, I just want to echo the sentiments of the panelists that this is the worst massacre we've seen in this country. But I want to say that I think the legal system also failed. The police to the courts, I don't understand how a cash bail of 10,000 shillings was granted. I can't wrap my head around it. We've seen Aisha Jumua's call for his arrest in 2018. this is 2023, so for 5 years, still no action was taken. So I'm just thinking, what else don't we know? What else is being swept under the rug? And this is just one isolated case, but I think Kenyans are starting to really rethink their religious practices. Kenyans are starting to really wonder, what is a cult? Am I in a cult? You know, there's all this banter on Twitter on, you know, the Prophet Wars and the mom and dad churches in Nairobi. So I see a level of critical thinking coming up, and people starting to look at religion more objectively, because as a millennial, we grew up being told that anything to do with God, church is good. We never thought that the same, you know, institution we've been told is good can turn into this vile thing we've seen. So I just think there's a reawakening about church, about religion, and I also want to see how the administration will respond. Because remember, this is an administration that came through the church. Okay, they won largely because of their church following. So how are they going to handle this very sensitive topic? So that's my sentiment. Thank you.
President William Ruto labeled, as I mentioned earlier, Paul Mackenzie a terrorist, you know, seeking to isolate him, single him out and say this is not representative of the wider church community. It's the same thing with the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya. They said this is a criminal. Let's deal with him as a criminal. The same way Muslim faithful say you cannot condemn the entire faith. I mean, these are individuals who have made individual choices. But before we get into the issue of regulation, right? Do we need tighter regulation? Florence, good morning. Good to see you this morning.
Counties away, so.
Yes, I'm so right. Like I said, perfect. It was perfect timing. Do you agree, or do you share the same sentiments as the Taifa Leo? Shakahola, serikali yazinduka usingizini.
That's correct. I share what Taifa Leo has said, because as my colleague has said here, Aisha Jumwa mentioned, Honorable Aisha Jumwa mentioned this, you know, sent an alarm. She's a leader. She sent an alarm in 2018. There's something going on here. And so one of the things I was writing here is that, you know, a chief and an assistant chief, they always know who has died, who is sick, who is being buried. Where was the chief? Where was the local administration? Where is the accountability of this man who is supposedly a religious leader for the last, you know, many years? I saw a clip yesterday saying that he closed the church in 2019 and therefore he cannot be held responsible. But I'm just thinking that somebody needs to be able to, and I know you said we don't talk about regulation, but there needs to be an accountability mechanism. It doesn't matter whether you're Dini Msambwa or whatever it is that you operate in as a religious outfit. There's somebody who should be held responsible when something goes wrong within your outfit. And I've always said this even around gender-based violence, that when there's a violation in the church or in a mosque, who is held responsible? Are those people just prayed for and then things end? Is that pastor exonerated and forgiven and then he's not held accountable by the law? And so this gentleman who the president has called, why did I call him gentleman? This guy who the president has called a terrorist, yes, definitely needs to face the law. But I'm wondering, the lawyer here, if you can tell us, where will they get the evidence? You know, so the bodies are there, and I'm hoping that we can get post-mortem, because some of these cults, you'll find it's organ harvesting. I saw that in a particular cult in Nigeria, and so these people might not even have starved to death. So let's wait for the post-mortems to see exactly what happened, because 73 bodies, that's a massacre. And that is not, should not be acceptable. The other thing I want to take an exception is with religious leaders. And you said our sister here is a religious leader. How come we don't also, us as religious leaders, sound an alarm early enough? Are we afraid to call out each other to say, excuse me, I don't think this is right? Calling out about, because these souls will be lost because somebody kept quiet. And therefore, I'm challenging the religious leaders. Why did you keep quiet for so long when lives are being lost? Lastly, most of these people were adults dragging in their children to this particular cult. So the children in this case had no other way. My son will follow, I mean, up to a certain age, will follow what I tell them. And therefore, adults were responsible for taking their children to that place, and the children died. Because when I saw bodies of children, women, it really broke my heart that somebody turned a blind eye and local administration pretended not to see what was going on. So I'm looking forward to see, the postmortem, and I'm looking forward to see, as we head into discussion of regulation, who will be held accountable for these other outfits that come up every other day. Yeah.
All right, Reverend Lois, I'm curious, especially now I'll get us into the issue of regulation. We do need to take a break though, so why don't we take a break and then we come back with that question of regulation, because when Ida Odinga raised it, although the season in which she raised it was a politically polarizing season, so the backlash was swift, you know, to the point where she had to retract those comments. But is it time to revisit this question, this issue? We come back on the other side of this break with this conversation.